Welcome to the Incredibly Human podcast. This is actually our very first podcast. Thank you for being here. I am with, I'm going to try to do this right, Kayla, Kaylee, Callie, and I'm Kyle.
It's not difficult at all.
It's not difficult at all. And I'm actually married to Callie. This is my wife. She is an ICU nurse. And really today I just wanted to get the perspective of what it is to be an ICU nurse. This is kind of about, having that opportunity to just share what's going on, especially in middle of a pandemic. So anyways, thank you for being here. Kaylee is hosting. This is her lovely house and her lovely table. What made you want to be a nurse?
Ooh, I wanted to be a nurse from the time I was in 5th grade. So I knew for the longest time. I like to care for people, so that's why.
I think what made me want to be a nurse is I wanted to help people, and I didn't really know when I realized I couldn't be a princess. I thought nursing was the second best thing.
Same general concept. Always had a heart for people, and I knew that. And that was one of the best ways to do it. And then, obviously, as you know, on a trip to Africa, we went to a hospital and they didn't have everything that was needed. None of the equipment that we have, and in terms of insurance and everything, they couldn't get the right amount of care that was required. And just kind of seeing that it really implanted that in me. Mm-hmm. That I did want to be a nurse for sure to help.
So when COVID broke out and it started heading this way generally, did y'all feel like it was going to be as bad as it is now, worse, better?
Didn't know what to expect.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect either. I remember talking to my in-laws about it and just kind of saying, I can't get stressed out about it right now. I can't worry about it because I still have to take care of my patients, and that's what I have to do.
I mean, it really did. You kind of heard, honestly, at first when I kind of heard about it, I didn't think too much of it. And then whenever I started seeing on the news, the hospital's getting overwhelmed and everything, I was like, that might be headed this way. But kind of like what Kaylee said, we couldn't focus on that yet.
Yeah, we had to still make it. I mean, I couldn't get scared about it.
Right.
Couldn't let myself go there.
Right. Well, I know, for me, I thought we were going to handle it. Honestly, I thought, we were just going to be better set up for it. And then obviously when it hit New York, and New York kind of became ground zero of just what, worst case scenario is. They had low PPE in the beginning. I know we were kind of freaking out about that. But also just kind of, we didn't know what the virus was exactly yet. But as a spouse, watching Callie, she was still working nights at the time, watching her go to work, it was a little stressful, and I'm sure y'all felt that anxiety too, just, unsure of, how bad the virus actually is, because we didn't have the statistics. We didn't really have, what it was actually doing yet. We just knew that when it did hit and it hit New York, it was like, they were getting hammered. But right now numbers are rising again. I think we're actually in Texas. We've got the most COVID cases, and I think we're second in deaths. And right now, from what I've looked up just yesterday, total in the U.S., you have over 12 million cases and over 257,000 deaths. And it's just picking up every single day. It seems like it's getting a little bit worse. So that being said, what's morale like in y'all's hospital right now?
I think we try to stick together. Obviously, we're sad, and we all know that we're all struggling, but I think that I feel like I'm closer to my team members than I've ever been.
That's what I was
and that
say.
Includes everyone. That includes the nurses and the doctors and the respiratory therapist and the techs. It includes all of us.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're all here. We have something that we have to do, and we're going to get through it together.
Yeah. And I think we know when we're having bad days, and I think everybody else can pick up on that too. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, we can do something to help, or, like, what do you want for lunch today? Just, little things like that.
Oh, yeah. No, I think we have a really strong team. I mean, morale is, like, as a team, it's really high. But, like, overall, whenever we start to kind of look at our patients and kind of what's going on, I think it has started to get to people. But again, we're really good about picking up on how someone else is feeling and stepping in and either helping them with whatever it may be, or, like she said, getting lunch for somebody, or honestly just like, well, let's go talk for a minute, like take a breath. But yeah, I mean, it's a really very strong team, and it has for sure brought us way closer than I ever thought we really could be.
Yeah.
Well, what's a day like at work then?
I mean, sometimes it kind of starts the night before. Like, you have to kind of prepare yourself, honestly, from like noon on the day before. It's already kind of setting in that you're going to go to work and you're going to experience what you've been experiencing for the past however long. And you have to kind of start preparing yourself. And not always, it doesn't always go real well. Like, for me, I'll either start to get kind of anxious, or I'll start to get real quiet and kind of shut off a little bit to prepare and, I don't know, gather myself before the day. And then when I wake up, I mean, I'm not too anxious. And like you said, some mornings I'm like, feels like a Starbucks morning, or it feels like, let's have iced coffee, let's start the day right. And unfortunately, a lot of times by the time you get to work, it's not a fun coffee type of morning. It's
you never know what you're gonna get
yeah
going in there, even before COVID.
Yeah.
But now it's even more pronounced.
Yes.
Now it's like you come home from work, you read about COVID on Facebook, you read everybody's opinions, you read, you turn on the TV and that's all they're talking about on the news. And then you have to go to work and talk about it for 12 hours, or really 14 hours if we're being realistic. And then when you're on your way home, your family calls and they want to know about COVID. And it's just, people didn't ask me about congestive heart failure. So people ask about COVID all the time. And it's talked about everywhere. So
Right.
We don't discuss diabetes,
Right.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I've actually kind of thought about that a little bit with just health in general. We, especially in America, we have so many chronic illnesses. We have really high cancer rates. We have just tons of heart-related illnesses and deaths that take people. But when it's happening really fast, and it's happening, and we're not in control, and it's not like a little day-to-day thing that's kind of over time working. So yeah, I think it's made us really in a fast, in fast motion, try to understand mortality and death and, illness, really, really fast. And a lot of people just weren't really prepared for it. But so I don't know that it's, maybe has it really changed that mindset at all, or like you were already you've had that, prepared mind for the really tough cases anyway.
I mean, I think we go to work every day and we know that we may see things that necessarily like other people don't understand, or, fortunately they don't understand it. And I think with COVID, I mean, I don't really think it changed the way we still go to work to take care of our patients and everything. But I know that for me, I don't constantly worry about like my family having cancer just because I saw somebody with really bad cancer at work. Whereas with COVID, I'm constantly thinking, I really don't want my grandparents to get this. I really don't want anybody else to get this and go through this. And I don't want other families to go through this. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
No, for sure. So, I don't want to get into like too dark of a place, but I do want to ask, some tougher questions, just to really allow people to understand what y'all are experiencing, day to day now. I think back before COVID and the pandemic, you had a few of those tough cases, something that happened, but now it's like it's intensifying. It's happening every day now, and it's really hard to escape it. With as much detail as you're allowed to give, what moments have you had to experience that really just kind of shook you and just kind of put you in a pretty vulnerable state?
I can say one that I think goes for probably all ICU or a lot of floors too, even when there's something that needs to happen emergently. But often it's intubation or putting patients on a breathing machine or a ventilator. And that moment before doing it is most of the time more traumatic. Not necessarily they're sedated, they're comfortable, they don't feel anything, but it's the moments right up to it. Like, we know that there's nothing further we can do without putting you on the ventilator. So often we'll have them call families, talk to their loved ones before they go on the ventilator, and they won't be able to speak for a few days, a few weeks, or quite honestly ever again. And those moments can be kind of traumatic. Just hearing them speak with their families, and they typically kind of, have a breakdown, and it really gets to everybody in the room as well. And then it may not hit you like initially right then, but whenever you've been doing it over and over and over again during COVID, and you see the ones that don't come off the ventilator, and you remember those moments that they had with their families, it can be traumatic.
Yeah, I'd say the exact same thing. Just having that moment. And then, we'll have family members call, and sometimes they remember that you're the nurse that let them talk to their loved one before they were put on the machine, and they'll thank you for it. And it's just, it's something that I'm very grateful that we get the opportunity to do. So it's really hard to, I guess, process that, because you're really grateful that they had that opportunity, and then you're also really sad because it came to that. But on top of what Callie said, not having families as involved, and I just mean they're not able to be in the room with them. They're not able, really
to see what's happening.
Yeah. So it just knowing that, and thinking if that was my family, I would be just terrified. And so putting myself in their shoes, which we always do. I do that with every single patient. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I know y'all aren't really allowed to, and we probably should make that a note. Y'all can't give specific stories. Y'all can't, talk about certain patients and what you experience. And I know there are certain cases that you probably definitely stick out in your mind. And you wish that you probably could, talk about, but just not allowed to. But, I think that's another thing that people don't often realize nurses are also doing is you're also between, you're also kind of the person that's between families. You're dealing with families and what they're experiencing in these moments. And, that's not entirely, I don't think it just kind of falls in your job description, but I don't think it's something that y'all were really prepared for in nursing school is, how to communicate with families, especially in a situation like this. Your job is, a lot of times it's the medical side of it. But now when you have to communicate to families in these dire situations, that's a lot of responsibility. And that's a lot of that's heavy conversations that you'll have to deal with. And, without, saying anything specific, I know Callie, when she comes home, a lot of times it's those situations that she carries with her more than anything is the, those moments that she had to either break the news or had to have those conversations with family members who obviously don't want this to happen. But how are y'all attempting to cope and handle the stress and the anxiety? Are you able to do that? Are you just feel like you're kind of pushing through, or
a little bit of everything?
some days you can kind of, I don't know, necessarily cope with it. No, not cope with it. Some days you can
Block it.
block it.
Block it. Or you can feel like you made a difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there are some days where absolutely you come out feeling, pretty good. Like you made a difference, that you were there for them or the family member, or even if they did pass, that you were still a support for somebody. But I'll be frank about my situation, that I'm not coping with it well. At all. And just as of recently, over like the past couple of weeks, just more and more, I come home and I still feel like I'm drowning.
Mm-hmm. And it's every day.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
No.
This is-
I don't know. I feel like I come home and I talk to my husband. I'm married to a firefighter paramedic who, he doesn't see great things at work either. So I feel like he's a great soundboard for me. And then really, talking about it with friends, or it's not, and I don't mean like friends who aren't in healthcare. I mean like the people I work with really kind of help get me through those rough days, and then of course my husband. But I think too, like recently I had someone reach out to me because their family member wasn't doing well, and they not at our hospital. It was just somebody who knew that I worked in a hospital and knew that I was a nurse. And so I was just able to tell them, like, this is a marathon, not a mile. You have to take every day at a time. And so that's what I have to remind myself. And that's what, I told her, and she was so grateful. I didn't realize that saying those things would help her. And then like being able to help somebody through that really made me feel, like I do make a difference, and I do, like there is a reason that I'm here right now doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I think, obviously I'm not in that situation or what y'all are going through at all, but when you can find purpose in something, it's a great motivator. It really pushes you forward. But, being married to Callie, and, she often brings it home, and that's my role. That's a spouse's role. That's our relationship. You're supposed to lean on your friends and family. But a lot of times I think it's difficult too, because this is something so, we're not used to. We haven't really prepared for it, I guess. She's come home and she's told me, some stories, and of course we can't talk about them, but situations where, I know it breaks her heart, and it breaks my heart to see that. And I there's days where I can tell that she's not coping well. She's told me she's had nightmares, has this memory of, patients even pleading with her, not to let them die. And it's like, how do you, I can't even imagine having to see that every single day. But it's tough. It's tough even just being a spouse, trying to figure out what the right thing is to say. And sometimes there isn't a right thing to say, and, we want people to cope with it, but this isn't something people are meant to cope with, and just seeing her constant anxiety, it stresses me out a little bit, but, yeah. So, I actually have a friend, who, he was a new ICU nurse. He just graduated, and he was still precepting when the pandemic broke out. And so if you don't know what precepting, that you're still shadowing a nurse, right? You're still learning the ropes. And he was doing this in the ICU, and really just kind of got thrown to the wolves. It was just like when it really broke out and it became really serious, it was, he had to just kind of figure it out. Well, anyways, I don't think it went well. And he ended up really having to leave. He had to quit. He couldn't do it anymore. And, I think it stinks because there's a lot of great people, especially new nurses who are wanting to get in there and they're wanting to help, but they're not ready for it. But he's opened up to me, and, we're not even real close friends, but he opened up and just said, now he has anxiety. He's not even doing it anymore, but he has anxiety. He feels it, just going out and about. He's suffering a little bit of PTSD, and, it's really, he doesn't even know if he wants to get back in nursing. It's just kind of destroyed his morale to even continue to do this.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine starting nursing during a pandemic.
Right.
No, it's hard enough as a already experienced nurse going through it, but seeing that and right out of school, and especially now for the new grads that didn't really have any clinical experience and then be thrown directly into that would be pretty traumatic.
Yeah, and it's also really just frustrating too, because we live in such a opinionated world right now, and 2020 has just been chaos. It's just been a terrible year, and then on top of everything, we've had an election year, which has just made everything tenfold. Made everything worse. You have people who think it's a hoax, but then you got anti-maskers, a lot of anti-vaccination groups. You have people who are falsely claiming miracle cures, having just kind of this mindset that, it's not as bad as people are making it out to seem. And I just know that hurt her a lot, and it hurt me, seeing that kind of stuff, because, I'm seeing what y'all are going through.
Some people don't know how real it is till they experience it themselves. And we deal with it every day. Mm-hmm. So we see how real it really is. I think anyone who knows anyone in healthcare knows that. But there's a lot of people who don't believe it, And you go to the store and you see people not wearing their masks, or mass groups of people going places. And you're just like, gosh, if they only knew. What if you lost your grandmother over this? Or, your spouse, your daughter, someone even young can be affected.
First of all, I think it's okay for everybody to have different opinions, and it's, that's why we are America. I think it's great, but I just feel like not every opinion that you have has to be shared on social media. And I just wish that more people would think about what they post before they post it, or think about how somebody else reading this, how it's going to affect them today. I've been very hesitant to post anything about COVID. I've shared one article since this has all started, and even when I posted it, I was like, I don't want to offend anybody, but at the same time, this is a really great perspective from medical people who see this every day. But I also, to go kind of along with that, I have been at places where people have made comments to me or my family about wearing a mask, and, to each their own. I'm not shouting at them for not wearing a mask. So I feel like kind of making fun of me for wearing mine. There's just no reason for it. So right. It's definitely made me feel differently about people in general, and, grateful for my husband and grateful for my friends, but definitely I look at people differently.
No, that reminded me, my husband is a police officer, and then I got pulled over in our town, and of course he was mad, but I told him, I said, you know what? I put my mask on immediately before that man got to my window, because if I were sitting here and you were a police, someone else, I would want them to wear a mask around you. And I put it on. He's like, oh, you don't have to put that on. And I was like, oh, I'm protecting you. And he goes, I said, I'm a nurse, so I would want, I want to wear a mask around you. And he just was like caught off guard by it. And I'm like, well, if you have to wear one, I'm going to wear one, Yeah. And I think that everyone, like even at fast food places, I had someone at Whataburger tell me, thank you for wearing a mask. And, I was like, well, I'm protecting you. They have to wear one in their place of work.
And I think the reality is we know that masks are not 100% guaranteed you're not going to get COVID.
But let's try something.
But it's something that we can do. It's something small that we can do that does make a difference. I worked in a COVID unit for 8 months wearing all of my personal protective equipment, surrounded by people. And I did not catch COVID until my husband got COVID. And we don't wear masks in our house. So that's how I caught it.
Yep.
So
and that's what happened to me.
And that's what I tried, everybody that I talked to after that, I tried to express that, like, oh, I worked in a COVID unit for 8 months and wore all of my equipment and didn't catch COVID until my husband brought it home. So
maybe just a mask for the time that you're in a public space would help.
Does make a difference.
If it's nothing but at least respectful to someone else. I mean, just that simple. I think that is the main part for me that gets to me. Like, no, again, like Kaylee, I'm never going to go up to someone and be like, why aren't you wearing a mask? But you do find a lot of people that come at you for wearing one when I'm really just trying to be respectful. And I think a lot of it is like misinformation again, and to see people at work, and whenever they feel like they can't breathe or they're going through a really bad symptom and it's getting pretty rough on them, the fact that people still won't wear a mask just to hopefully prevent or save one person's life is really what gets to me. It actually it hurts. Kyle knows, and I think I even told y'all, going to a restaurant, and it felt like the manager was telling the workers not to wear a mask. Like, that's just kind of the vibe I got just by one of the workers kind of coming up and putting a cup down on the table and then like stepping back like they were kind of nervous. And so, I had felt like the manager was kind of forcing that on them, and it was enough to make me cry in the bathroom. Like, I felt for them. And then it just feels like a lack of respect for other people's lives. That's kind of how I view it.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to that story because that has a lot of layers, that day that we had. But also, we should probably say the reason why we're not wearing masks right now, obviously, or have some sort of divider, is because Kayla and Kaylee both got COVID. So we feel like we're kind of in the clear right now.
Yeah, my husband's already tested negative. Yeah. I'm negative.
We got it from our husband,
our essential worker husband, but
they were doing their jobs, and that's how they got it. So
police officer and firefighter, room of public servants besides me. So I think we live kind of this us versus them world. This false narrative that it's you're either on the right side or you're on the wrong side. You're on the good side or you're on the evil side. Especially, this is an element that's used in story. It's used in movies. It's used in politics. It's used all across. It's been a part of our world forever and ever. But I think it also hinders truth, because reality is there's a lot of gray. It's not one side is right and one side is wrong. It's not one side's good and one side's evil. It's just people have, like you said, different opinions and different beliefs. And I'm with you. I think we have to respect those. We have to respect everybody's opinion, and be very tolerant and very inclusive with others. But this isn't normal circumstances that we're living in. And I that's why I kind of get baffled by it. If this was like just, we're taking all these precautions because of, even the common flu, then, I'd be like, okay, yeah, we're pushing a lot of agenda here or something. But this is a pandemic that is raging across the entire world. It's not just a normal circumstance. These are special circumstances. So something that sits on your nose and on the bottom of your chin seems just like a very small sacrifice to allow us to continue to move forward and open up and everything. But, I do think that, something that's come to my mind recently is when I think of nurses, I think of y'all as you're pro-human, you're pro-life, you're pro dignity and people's health and bringing them back to their original state and taking care of them. You're pro this human being's life.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and I don't want to turn it into black and white because, I just talked about that and I don't think it's fair, but sometimes it feels like our society, we're getting more and more anti-human. We're like anti, other people's lives and their, what they're going through. We're kind of anti-empathy and we're anti-tolerant. And, we're just really putting ourselves in corners and building walls to really just preserve ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and not so much other people. So that's just kind of, that's where I get, I don't think you would bully somebody like a mom who puts her kid into a car seat. You want to make fun of her for being safe. And, we have rules and regulations and mandates, thousands and thousands of little things that people don't realize that were mandated and regulated to protect you.
I have something to add to that.
Yeah, go for it.
So in high school, when I lived in Colorado, I had this speaker come to our school, and he was great. Anyways, he opened my eyes, and I will never forget. He said, "You never know what someone is going through. If we all had a billboard above us or a poster on our chests that says what we were going through, then you would be able to sympathize with everyone around you." And so I think in today's world, we all need to think, we have no idea what someone else is feeling, what they're going through, what they've experienced, all of that. And that we need to be respectful of that and know that someone may be having something really heavy
Mm-hmm.
in their life, or really great. Who knows?
Yeah. I think that's the thing with all the posts that I feel most strongly about is I just wish that people would just think about what they're posting and what
Mhm.
good their post is going to do, first of all.
Right.
If we already know exactly how they feel about everything, because that's,
Mhm.
but, just how it might affect someone else that day, because you just don't know what people are dealing with.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I need to have empathy for everyone.
And
I
it
think
used
that's what
to be
society is
fun.
missing
It-
right now.
Yeah, it used to be fun to come home
Yeah.
and play on my phone for an
Yeah.
hour and then kind of start talking to my husband and have that moment of silence
Yeah.
and then be able to start talking. And anyways, it's just not fun anymore.
It's not, because you get in your own head about everything that's going on. Yeah.
Well, do y'all feel like, kind of building on top of that, that it would actually make a difference if people legitimately kind of followed these, mandates and recommendations, that if we social distance, wear a mask and, kind of all this stuff, that it would help y'all out inside the ICU room and prevent deaths until we could, get to a point of a vaccine and healing?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we saw that. We saw our numbers went down drastically, and that was with the state opening back up. That was with restaurants being open to a lower capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That was with us not having big gatherings. I think gatherings were still restricted, but I think it really is difficult. I know my family's not going to be together on Thanksgiving this year or probably Christmas, likely. And so I know that it's sad, but at the same time, we all know that we want my grandma to be around next Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my grandpa.
Yes, exactly.
So I think, it's...
We were all itching for that normalcy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Too soon.
I know. I remember back when all this started, I would tell my Mama, just one more month.
Yes.
One more month, I think, before I can come over and hug you again. And, that was 8 months ago?
Yeah. And even whenever I had in March when I had my wedding planned, and 2 weeks before that I had to cancel it because COVID started and everything shut down, And then it's okay, I'm going to replan it for September. It's 6 months away, right? It's going to be fine. No. And now we're hoping for next March to, redo it. And a lot of people are in that same boat, thinking, okay, by this time next year it's going to be better, or by this time next year, you know, whatever. And I know you've said like your parents aren't going back to work like until they had like a set.
I don't
a lot
even
of people like a set date. You're not going to be back in person until June of next year. So it's like, man, we hope this doesn't last that long.
Well,
but
I think that, you know, I think that's fair. You kind of have to have that hope, because that's kind of what gets you through it. And so I think we all did that early on. But you're right. I just saw where when Arizona, they implemented their mask mandates, they saw a 75% drop in COVID cases. And then same with Oklahoma, same with Texas. I do remember when we started doing things, you know, there was even a dead period where it was like,
it definitely got better for a while.
Yeah, it was better for a while. And then it just kind of like
creeped and then
blindsided us.
And then it blew up.
Yeah.
And you think that was related to, you know, my personal theory is, you know, I think people got pandemic fatigue.
Yeah.
And school started. So it's like you can't, you know, the kids have to go back in some form.
Right.
Because I can't imagine being young and missing an entire grade because of a pandemic. They had to do something.
Well, and there's some kids that need to go to school.
There's kids
like
who need
that's
to
their
be in
safe
school.
place.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's really difficult. I don't know. I just wish that maybe if you're going to school and you know that you're going out and being about, you're also not going home to those people that are high risk for for getting COVID and high risk for not doing well with COVID, you know?
I remember being at a coffee shop with my friends after work one day, and there was a group of people that I could tell were definitely teachers. I heard them talking about getting ready for school. And I was just listening to them, you know, and they were being very cautious, but like coming up with ideas. And it was very interesting to hear how they were preparing, but how they also sounded scared in a way to go back and unsure.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting to hear that. And I'm thinking, gosh, I've been doing this. We've been dealing with this since March. And, you know, and here they are. They're going to have to go back to the world. They're probably scared.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think a lot of people did get pandemic fatigue.
For sure.
And I think a lot of them too, if it didn't directly affect their family just yet, then I think that's when a lot of the misconceptions started to spread. Where maybe it's not even going to hit my family, so then we will have our gatherings. I'm not going to wear a mask because I'm young and healthy, you know, like a lot of them too, they think they're young and healthy, or I've really supported my immune system. But I mean, I revert back to it's to protect others. But I do think a lot of people just got fatigued and they weren't seeing it firsthand, so they thought it was okay. But I mean, who can blame them?
Businesses got more laxed.
Yes.
You know,
really
before you would go to the grocery store and they had that annoying line where everybody had to make sure that you were wearing your mask. And now I see most people in Walmart aren't wearing their mask anymore, and it's just not being enforced. Like it's so. I mean, yeah. What does that show you? You know,
right? And I think you have to go back to listening to y'all. You know, and this is why it's important to kind of say these things and to advocate for it and do it in a respectful way. You know, again, not create this us versus them, you know, kind of narrative, but just remind people that one, it does work. Two, it takes the load off of y'all, and we're going to kind of talk about that in a little bit. But, you know, I think a lot of it was pre-election. There was a lot of, I think that was kind of stemming from it. We had two opposing sides. After the election, I think a lot of people kind of reverted to that. Because you're right, or you know, it seems like we're seeing less and less people wear masks nowadays. But then also, you know, pandemic fatigue and you know, I think just a lot of people are just done with it. They're just, I'm done with this. I'm done with dealing with it. They want to open everything back up. They want things to go back to normal, and you know, I think that's fair. We all feel that way. But the only way it's ever going to get to that is if people stop getting sick, essentially. And that's, it's not going to happen just, right off the bat. But I just read a little article that said the Kansas City hospitals in Missouri, they're like begging their governor to mandate a mask because they're having like 190 cases, I think, each day. And it's starting to take a toll on the staff and the hospitals. The beds are filling up. Nurses are starting to break. They're getting tired, depressed. And I think that's kind of what we have to protect too. And I kind of wanted to bring that up is, a lot of people, they drive by a hospital and they see that it's a huge hospital and they think there's no way that thing is full of COVID, which it's not. And I think this is important to remind people is that COVID patients who are really ill, they end up in the ICU, some form of ICU or a PCU unit, which is a step down unit. But they end up in your hands, y'all's hands. Not any nurse is going to be able to handle a situation like that. Nothing against, other nurses and what they have to deal with. But there's a level of intensity and knowledge that when it comes to patients who are really, really sick and they're on ventilators, they need the right equipment. They need the right staff to take care of them. Am I right on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, it's not like, yes, there's a lot of hospital beds, but are there enough ICU staff members? Are there enough ICU beds? Are there enough ventilators? And then if y'all start breaking and y'all are dealing with the stress and the anxiety and y'all are overworked, you're working like 100 shifts this month. She just flipped. Kayla just worked a night shift last night and she's working a day shift tomorrow. She woke up right before this podcast. But y'all are working crazy hours. Y'all are working all the time. You're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed. If anything, this is also a plea of people just, think of y'all to me, sometimes, think of our ICU staff, our hospitals, help them manage this, because if y'all are overwhelmed or if y'all's ICU fills up, what happens? Where do these patients go? If they can't go in your hospital, they got to go somewhere else. And if they got to transfer somewhere, we were just talking about a story where a patient had to come a few states over. So that's kind of what's at stake, right? It's can y'all handle the overwhelming amount of patients? Y'all have any input on that?
I think a lot of places are experiencing that full capacity. Nursing homes, everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think so too. I think that there are some parts of healthcare that probably aren't as affected, just with, like my grandma recently had knee surgery, and like obviously the ortho people, luckily they were asked once they realized I was a nurse working in an ICU, they had a billion questions for me. But I mean, I think it's hard when you get into a profession and your goal is to help people. We forget that we have to help ourselves a lot of the time. And you're so focused on, even today, like I wonder what's going on at work today, or you're thinking about
constantly
those people that, are in other hands, and it's hard to remember that you have to take care of yourself. And luckily most of us have great support systems that remind us, like Seth will say, or my husband will say, I think you're working too much, or, hey, why don't you not work any extra this week?
Yeah.
Well, y'all are being asked like constantly,
Yes.
Can you work? Can you work? Can you work? Can you work?
Place is like that.
A lot of places.
Every
Yeah.
single one.
Yeah. So it's, you just have to be able to help yourself, and you have to remember that you also, like, if you're not functioning 100%, we are in a profession that we have to be on top of our game all the time. Like, I don't have time or energy a lot of times to focus on other things going on in the world, because when I'm at work, like, I can't even come home and watch a dramatic show because, you just put all your energy and everything into your job. And I love it. And I wouldn't change it for the world. But, we have to remember that we have to remain that way. And to remain that way, we have to stay rested, and we have to learn how to come home and cope or find a way.
Right. And I think a lot of times too, like you said, when you're not there, you think about it, and then you also feel, it's completely irrational, but you feel guilty for not being there.
Yeah.
Like you start to think, okay, well, maybe I'll just go in and help for a couple of hours.
Yeah. How can I coordinate my schedule?
Yeah. It's like, how can I be there in that? And how can I also not be there? Like, it's just, you're completely torn between the two.
Or you have some days where you are like, what if I wouldn't have been at work today?
Exactly.
Like, what if I wouldn't have been with these people at this time?
Yep.
Like you question that. And
or what if I would have been there? Like an extra hand.
Yeah.
Would that situation have not happened? Yeah.
And that, the way y'all are describing it is how invested you are in your patients, and I promise you, if people were walking in the ICU and saw what y'all saw on a daily basis, I'm pretty sure people would change their mindset on a lot of this. And I think that's where a lot of people are they're shutting that part off. They're just turning that mindset off. Like they're not allowing themselves to really see what's happening. And that's denial. That's a coping mechanism. We all do it. We do it to kind of protect ourselves and our mental state. But I understand Callie's been coming home and watching Great British Baking Show like crazy.
Yeah.
Eating chocolate.
You just need to.
Right. You're
so true.
I watch TikTok videos, but only the animal ones.
And you want to know what I've done since you gave me back my Mario? Every single day. I've been playing Mario.
Yeah, you don't have the energy for anything dramatic, nor do you have the emotional capability.
Right. To deal with it. Sometimes I've had to shut my mom down. I'll be like, Mom, I really can't. I'm sorry. I know that I listen to other people's problems all day long, but I just need you to
and then you find yourself not thinking about work for a little while, and you're like, wow, this is really great.
This is nice.
All right, so when someone crashes or codes in the ICU, when there's a crisis that takes place, what does the unit do? Whenever somebody hits a code, what happens?
They all
rush over there.
Respond.
Right.
Everybody responds.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how fast I put on my N95 the other day and all of my gear.
And that's actually a very real situation and kind of a hard one too.
It is.
If they start to genuinely if we know they're crashing, we're in the room, but sometimes it happens sudden. And the thought of, can I put all this stuff on fast enough? Because we have to protect ourselves, obviously. And also we would get in a lot of trouble for going in there, and it's just not safe. But that's a scary thought in itself. Like, can I put everything on quick enough to get into the room to start compressions to hopefully save the patient? But yes, when we hit a code button, or we can see it coming, I've seen it coming, and I've picked up my work phone and called one of them real quick, and I'm like, it's about to happen. But you hit the button and people come running in. We do limit the amount of people that are in there, especially like with COVID. But when you start compressions, you get all your medications and protect the airway, and do it literally until you're sweating.
Hopefully stabilize.
It doesn't always end well.
It gets my heart racing just thinking about critical situations. I know I moved to day shift recently, and I had a situation where I was like, man, Callie, this is like, I'm in the zone. Okay. Like, you get in the zone, you're like, man, I'm really taking care of these people, and you're like rolling with the punches. And it was a crazy day, but it was a good day as far as feeling like I made a difference in nursing and in myself. But there are those times where there's some calmness, and then there's an alarm that goes off, or there's like the sound of the phone that there's a
Like
rapid
a code
response
blue.
or a code blue, and you're rushing.
Yeah.
And those sounds, I think, sometimes can get to you
Yes.
significantly.
Yeah.
There's a new machine on our floor that sounds just like another machine, and I'm like, I need to respond to that.
Yeah, you think,
Oh, that's something.
Or like I worked on a different floor the other day and a rapid response was called, and I'm used to being the one to respond to those, and I immediately was mad because my phone didn't go off. And I was like, why didn't my phone go off? This was supposed to go off before I heard it overhead. And then I thought, oh wait. Okay.
Yeah,
It's not me today.
it's crazy how like auditory senses.
It does actually. So we all charge in the ICU, and that phone goes to the charge nurse phone, and it's a very specific sound, and it means that something is happening, a code, or it's something critical, and we need to attend to it quickly. And actually at Home Depot, which is funny, they have phones and it is the same exact
sound.
Noise.
Oh,
and
no.
I'm in there and like I hear it and it like just it does something.
Where's the emergency?
Yeah, I'm like, what was that? Where is this?
I attribute this to a time me and my husband were somewhere. We were actually buying a car, and this man asked him, "Oh, you're a police officer, and man, that must be really hard." And he just shut off, like zoned out, like he was thinking about something deep in a thought. And I reached over and I grabbed his arm, and he came back to reality. And it's funny because him and I have a lot of that happens a lot where we relate, and he gets it. Where like you hear a sound and he had like a certain tone would go on his radio if there was a robbery in progress or something like that. And hearing those tones can get to him as well, and you kind of just like flip and you're just like in this another zone. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a good and daunting feeling.
It is. It's a daunting that for us it's like, you know,
it also like some adrenaline starts going.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So whenever this crisis happens though, and what happens if your unit doesn't respond?
If the unit was to not,
If people didn't show up to your call?
if people didn't show up,
If we weren't there, who knows?
patient wouldn't make it.
Yeah. But then, see, at the same time, it's like that is where we belong.
Right.
That's where we belong.
Yeah. I remember one time when I had recently moved from night shift to day shift. Or no, I hadn't even moved yet. I had just picked up a random day shift when I was still working nights. And so I wasn't used to working with like that specific group of people. And like it was right at shift change, and it was a bad situation, obviously, with the patient. And I just remember Kayla and like my night shift team coming in, and I was like, okay, like I just immediately, not that the other nurses weren't just as good, but like I knew them and I knew what they were going to do to help me. And it just immediately relieved me.
I can't tell you how many times like me and someone else, it's like we're working in sync and we don't even know that we're doing it until after the fact. And I'm like,
yeah,
it's really
good
teamwork.
Man, we are some good teamwork. So you're like, holy
like you
cow.
know what they're gonna do, and
it's just crazy.
But
how has this helped y'all's sisterhood?
Oh my gosh,
oh, man.
We've grown so close.
I don't know.
And we have such a close group of like people that we can always talk to. I mean, even last night I texted them and I'm like, I am so anxious. And just getting feedback from them and having them in my life has made such a big difference. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, I don't even know what I would do.
I know.
I mean, we sell that to each other all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I do not know what I would do
Yeah.
without you.
It's like my nursing
Probably
sisters.
daily.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
For being honest, it's probably like a daily.
It's like,
Yeah.
good morning. I don't know what I would do without you.
Yeah.
And Callie, she's mentioned multiple times just how, going through something like this has just caused y'all to have just a very deep bond. Just going through a crisis, going through a moment like that, you just connect. Kind of how you were talking about you and your husband, both going through a very traumatic stuff. You relate, and you can tell right off the bat what people are going through. Yeah. So my, kind of what I'm thinking about though is like if people don't respond and there wasn't this teamwork, obviously the unit would fail, right? People would get sick, people would die. If you don't have people responding, bad things happen. Your husband's a firefighter. He knows to handle a wildfire, you have to surround it. You have to put boundaries around it, and you have to prevent it from spreading. And it just kind of reminds me of, kind of what we're going through right now. It's kind of like that. There's a crisis alarm going off. We have a wildfire that's spreading. We need people to respond. We need nurses to respond. And I think y'all are responding, but we also need other people to respond. If y'all are the charge nurse, the person who's hitting the light, or the person on you need your teammates. You need people to kind of step up to the plate and say, look, I'm here to help. And that's kind of how I see our community right now. I see society and our friends and family. We're all sick of it. We're sick of the pandemic. We're sick of COVID. But the only way that we can actually protect people and save lives is if we kind of have this team effort. And it's to be very pro-life and very pro-people and very pro-human. And Callie mentioned, this story the other day. When we went to, or you mentioned it earlier, where we went to breakfast and she was having a particularly bad week. And if you want to make Callie happy, you take her to breakfast. It's like her favorite thing in the world is to take her to brunch. So we were going to go to one restaurant, get brunch, and they were closed for some reason. So we were like, well, let's try this other place that's new. I'm not going to say who it is or anything. But we get there and no one's wearing a mask. No one, and this is like in the middle of it. This is, I think, when things were just reopening. Like people should have been wearing a mask. People weren't wearing a mask. They weren't separating. They weren't trying to social distance whatsoever. And we sat down and she was just kind of looking around, very uncomfortable. And, it was kind of like, should we leave? Should we stay? And we decided, well, we're here. Let's just kind of see how it goes. And like she said, a lady came and brought drinks, and she set the drinks down really fast and she backed away. And I did look at her. I was like, it almost felt like she's uncomfortable. And I was like, I wonder if they're just not allowing her to wear a mask. Anyway, so she, we were both kind of, we were like, well, we're here. Let's just go ahead and stay. Well, this man behind us sat down, and I couldn't see him. Callie could see him. And I couldn't really tell. You could hear him though, and Callie could see him, but it almost kind of felt like maybe he was on the spectrum, or maybe he had some sort of disability, or maybe he was just very, socially kind of awkward or whatever. But just kind of the way he talked, and he was kind of talking to surrounding people, but he was sitting there by himself. And then Callie's just kind of watching them, and I could hear him, and he pulled out his wallet, and he only had he was sitting here and kind of counting it on the table. And it was like he was trying to figure out how much he could afford, for that meal. And that was like the breaking point. Callie got up, she went to the bathroom, and she was gone for a while. And she told me later on that she just lost it. She was in the bathroom crying. And, I think obviously the pandemic, and then seeing him, and just kind of everything swelled up, and it overran, its cup. And she came back and she's like, we're buying that man's meal. And I was like, okay. I was a little caught off guard, but I was like, yeah, no, for sure. I was like, I'm kind of, I'm worried that, people might take offense to that. It's just one of those things where like, let's fill it out a little bit. But she's like, no, it's already done. I already told the waitress, this is what we're doing. And I was like, okay, yeah. So anyways, she bought his meal, and He was very, thankful. He was very happy. He was very surprised. And, he left. And then I started getting like, all emotional and stuff. And we leave the store, and it was, or leave the restaurant. And, I was kind of choking up a little bit myself. She was really emotional. And, in my head, I thought, we could have left that situation, being uncomfortable, and just kind of left and gone somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But instead we stayed there, and something good happened from it. There was this good moment. And I feel like in this situation right now, we need more people like that. We need more Callies in the world, and I'm very proud. I was very proud of that moment. But people who are, instead of just throwing a fit, complaining because somebody does something that's a little bit different, you meet it with something else. You meet it with something that's good, something that's positive. Anyways, it was a special moment. And I feel like if people can just be pro-human, be pro, people, and respect what is going on, and let's start meeting this thing with those moments, just love and grace and acceptance. And, instead of it becoming this individual making me angry, acting out, acting like a bunch of teenagers, frustrated with their parents. Let's just meet this with something good. Let's meet this with something, positive. And let's have kind of this nurses mentality, which is go to that person who's in need, run to his aid, run to her aid. And just have that heart, that kindness, and I know she told y'all, and I think somebody else started crying, and
it was me.
Yeah.
I'm a crier.
Yeah. So,
but I cried because it just,
they
I
have
don't
the
know.
same heart, and
I just wish more people would have that, empathy for humanity.
But it's just such a beautiful thing. Like it, I'm drawn to those stories. I'm drawn to where people just, if it's one person and the whole community gets behind that one person who needs it, that's just such a wonderful thing. And I feel like, why can't we all love those stories? Most of us do, but very few of us act on that. Very few of us, actually dive into those moments and embrace them. We're so, reclused and secluded and off put, and we're just so judgmental towards people, and we're so, and that challenged me. That was a moment that challenged me as a person. And, we have to celebrate those moments. And, I want to celebrate what you guys are doing. I want people to have the same heart that y'all have, because it's huge. Y'all have this huge, giant abyss of a heart for people. And, it's a beautiful thing. And, I'm proud. I'm speaking on behalf of y'all's families, our families, and everybody. And I just, I really hope that we can kind of move forward with that same heart and that same mindset to, not let this thing become political. Don't let it be fearful. Let's embrace it for what it is and do good. How has going through what y'all have gone through just changed you as human beings?
I think more about, just how I respond to people, and I'm very careful. I think I'm a little bit more careful now, reserved maybe at just my response to people. It's so weird because I haven't been around just like a ton of people that I am not going through this with. So it's hard, but I go to church, and just I feel like I'm a little bit more reserved in just my response to things. And, if people don't ask me about it, I don't talk about it. And, whereas before I like to tell everybody everything.
Yeah.
If you know me, you probably know everything about me. And so I think that, it's just different. Like, I don't think people realize, and I don't think people know. And that's different for me. I mean, I don't know why I've done that. I just have.
Yeah. I think so too. It's definitely made me more emotional person.
Same.
That's for sure. But I mean, that's not always a bad thing to be completely in touch with your emotions, obviously, because it was that did drive me to that. But I mean, that, and then just a lot. I mean, I can't speak enough to the bonds that I've created through this that have been enough to kind of change my life as well.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate y'all doing this. I feel like if we could somehow manage a few more podcasts, it would be cool. But it was like really hard to just get y'all all on one day together, just being off. Plus, y'all are so sick of COVID, you don't want to talk about it. But I really do appreciate y'all being here and kind of opening up about this. I know some of it, is kind of hard to even dabble in there. You don't want to talk about it too much, but we appreciate what y'all are doing. If you're somebody who's listening or you're watching this, go thank a nurse. Send them a thank you card. Send them some flowers. Send something to their unit. Just let them know that you're listening, you care, because I think it means something. Just to know that people are behind you. Reach out to them. Let them know. If you want to help these nurses, you can go to our website. We've got a little something for them that we're kind of working on too. But yeah, I really appreciate y'all being here. I'm going to close with just one more tiny question and then we'll wrap it up. So this is something that just this is kind of what Incredibly Human to me represents, is diving into these discussions of what it means to be human. And so that's kind of a question that I want to end on, a lot of these podcasts is, what do you think it means to be human? And especially as from the perspective of a nurse, and experiencing what y'all see on a day-to-day basis, what y'all experience with people at the end of life, just what do y'all see whenever you see these human beings, and what do you think that means?
I mean, I think, and again, like from a nurse's perspective, is we see people in their most vulnerable times of their life. And I think that's a huge part of being human, is being vulnerable and like expressing that, and being able to open up. And I mean, because sometimes, I do feel like people kind of reserve themselves until it's, maybe too late, or right before it is the end, and then they kind of express, to their loved ones and stuff. But and I think it's also to just realize that you're human, and so is everybody else. To have that respect and that empathy for others, I think is huge.
Yeah, I think caring about people and, showing people your heart. It's no secret that I cry. I've cried with my patients. I've cried with our family members. I've cried, with our doctors and our nurses and our RTs. And I just think that I'm not embarrassed by it at all, because these people get to see that I'm crying with them most of the time. So I just caring and showing your heart.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. And I think I look at all of our patients, like you see like a certain patient age and you're like, that's the age of my grandma, or that's the age of my little brother.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I think we always have that. And I've heard other nurses say that too. We have to save this person. That's my brother's age. And, just, I don't know. I look at them like they're my family.
Yep. Yeah.
And if it were my family, how would I want them to be taken care of?
I agree. I just have this burning thought in my head of something that happened recently where I straightened up a woman's ring on her ring finger before her husband came in to say his goodbyes. And I think thinking that and thinking, gosh, how do I want this man to see her for his last time with her? And I think that's part of being human.
Yeah.
Thinking how other people would feel and then acting on that.
That's perfect. We were actually all there that day.
I cried
for
that day.
one.
I looked at her and I said, Kelly, I gotta go. She knew in my face. I was like, I have to go right now.
So she exited crying whenever we got the patient and the family all there, basically to say goodbye. Kaylee stepped in and I exited crying, and then Kaylee stayed for a moment, and then she came out and we totally disregarded the COVID. We were wearing masks, but and like we said, they had already been negative for COVID, but we did all hug in the break room for a good while. I mean, just crying, and it's that. I mean, it was such a human moment.
Right. To see people in their most fragile state and appreciate life and appreciate it so much that you're willing to do the little things to just demonstrate that to their loved ones. All right. Let's end on that. Anyways, well, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your input. And let's call it. That's good.
Yes.
I don't know how to end these things.
Part 2 to come.
Yeah, clap.